What's going on, everyone? Welcome back into another live edition of the Patriots Beat podcast here on the CLNS Media Network, presented by our wonderful friends over at Prize Picks and Game Time. It's Brian Hines back, as always, with Alex Barth. Just about 22 hours away from the 53-man roster cutdown window. The Patriots' final preseason game is wrapped up last night with a 20-10 loss to the Washington Commanders. Plenty of things to talk about from that game, and you could probably imagine it's the quarterback and the offensive line as it's been for most of the summer. So we'll start with the game, and then at the end of the show, we can wrap it up with the roster moves the Patriots made today and a little look ahead to maybe what they might still do tomorrow. But we'll start with the quarterbacks. Jacoby Brissett got a series, maybe left with a shoulder injury. Drake May comes in, finishes the first half, looks pretty good. It wasn't, perfect, but more encouraging signs. Gerard Mayo says this morning on the radio that he has outplayed Jacoby Brissett, but maybe he's still not the best quarterback to start week one. So a lot of stuff going on with the quarterback room right now. Before we get more into their performance last night, let's talk more about like what Mayo had to say, and just I'll kick it to you. Like, what is going on in this quarterback room right now?
Yeah, so I think between it all, and people have pointed out kind of contradictions between saying last night he's the second best quarterback and this morning saying he's outperformed Jacoby Brissett. And the only way those can both be true is if the depth chart is Joe Milton, Drake May, Jacoby Brissett. But in all honesty, I think that, and we've kind of talked about this, and I know people have speculated this, they don't want to start Drake May yet. They don't believe he's ready, and I have no problem with that plan of taking their time with him. I'm very much on the record with that, but I think they don't want to start him yet. But the cat's kind of out of the bag, and people have seen him, and fans have seen him, and they're excited, and they're trying to figure out what the messaging is. How do you tell this fan base that's so starved for quarterback play that they're going to have to wait a little bit longer? And, last night he's the second best quarterback. Today it was, well, there's other things we have to consider, experience, which obviously Drake May is not going to catch Jacoby Brissett in experience.
Yeah.
So I just think it's more signs that Jacoby Brissett's going to be the week one starter, and they're trying to figure out where to go from there, how to present it from there.
I feel like it's Drake May, like Mayo's correct. We've been saying it for a few weeks. We've seen it on the practice fields, even on the preseason games. Like May has played better than Jacoby Brissett. He has outplayed him, but I feel like it's just at a point, and we will certainly talk about the offensive line, where they don't want him, the rookie, behind the offensive line right now. And they're kind of okay with just kind of throwing Jacoby to the wolves right now. They're basically paying him $8 million to do that, but they just don't want to outright say that. So they're falling back on, he's got the experience, he can handle those types of things. You saw last night, even that third down, the Commanders bring like a 6-man pressure. He's got to throw hot, like nice little dump off to Antonio Gibson. Like that's the stuff that you can bank on Jacoby Brissett, the smart plays like that. And that's what they're kind of falling back on, to say, we don't have to throw Drake May. Gerard Mayo literally said this morning, like, we've seen young quarterbacks get thrown to the wolves. They don't want to do that, and that's probably how they have to phrase this, because he has outplayed them, and that's really the only way they can justify Jacoby Brissett starting week one right now.
Yeah, I think that's it, and you wonder if this is why maybe May played less in the preseason early on, but to me, all the signs point to Jacoby Brissett being the week one starter.
As long as he's healthy.
As long as he's healthy, right. There's that. So that's the other thing we learned last night is Mayo was asked if, and this is the part I don't like. Like I said, I'm fine taking time with Drake May, but if you're going to do that, do it. Jacoby Brissett's injury shouldn't change that. And now you need a buffer quarterback, whether it's Bailey Zappe or whoever. But Mayo made it sound like last night that's not the plan, that they'll go to Drake May if Jacoby Brissett gets hurt. And it seems like he's fine after what happened last night. Just between staying in the game, staying in uniform on the sideline, all of that. But it's just a reminder of what can happen, especially behind this offensive line.
So if they're saying they're ready, if Jacoby Brissett goes out there week 2 and gets hurt and they're ready to put Drake May in, would your counter just be, okay, just put Drake May in week 1 anyway, because there's a chance, like, Jacoby hasn't been the most durable player in his career. There's a chance it's just going to have to happen even sooner than you would expect anyway. So why not just bite the bullet and put Drake May in there? Or are you saying, okay, like, let's just try to get as much Jacoby as we can until we're really comfortable with Drake May?
I guess that one, yeah, it's more about them than him. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want that shot Jacoby Brissett took last night. I
To
know
happen to
Drake May
Drake.
is like mobile and can move around, but that's simply you leave an edge rusher unblocked and he comes in clean. I don't know what more Drake May's going to do there. He's a little bigger, maybe he absorbs the hit a little better, but he's also bigger, and maybe it's it's a little more weight coming down on that shoulder. So I would just like to see them figure out the offensive line a little more before they put Drake May in. So I guess at that point I would say, well, at least let Jacoby Brissett take the beatings while you're figuring it out early, as long as he can.
Yep. And then the other thing I was going to bring up, because you mentioned, like, how do you pitch this to the fan base, right? Like, it's
Yeah.
not going to be the popular choice going to Jacoby Brissett over Drake May now that you've seen these flashes. And Silver Knight kind of teed it up. How do you
Yeah.
think that sits with the team? Because this is something I talked about, like, right after even they drafted Drake May, where if he's the best player on the practice field, the team they're going to be like, okay, what's going on here? Why isn't the best quarterback on the field? Right. So how do you think those, maybe even the defensive players, especially, they're seeing it, how do you think they might feel if they're losing games with Jacoby Brissett out there? Do you think it's like, give them a month, like they can get behind a month maybe, or they can even get behind Jacoby Brissett, because it hasn't been a dumpster fire with Jacoby Brissett in there. So maybe they can just kind of handle that for the time being.
Yeah, I think this team is okay getting behind Jacoby Brissett. Look, he was good at the start of camp. We've heard guys talk about what a leader he is, and Gerard Mayo even said last night on the broadcast that, like, Drake May was kind of deferring at one point to Jacoby Brissett as being the leader of the team. So it's not like it's not like Brissett has no cachet with the roster. That would
It's
be
not
a
like the
different
last
conversation.
couple years in the locker room with the
Right,
quarterback
where you
room.
had two guys who were both young, both of even standing, who didn't get along with each other. I think that's part of it too, that fosters an environment to pick sides. As far as we know, Jacoby Brissett and Drake May get along great. Now, that there's a clock on that. And if Jacoby Brissett comes out and isn't playing well, that will shift. And that's kind of what we talk about, where, how do you know when it's time to go to Drake May? But I think week one, or the first few weeks, you can sell the team on Jacoby Brissett.
Yep. I agree with you there. So we're still waiting Gerard Mayo said, they'll see how Jacoby feels this morning. Didn't seem like anything too serious. He said he would have came back in the game last night if he wanted to, or if they wanted him to, but it was only a plan to get him one series. So we'll see how his shoulder looks. They still haven't made a decision.
And I would just say, for the record, Mayo said before the game the plan was one or two series. So that's not
that didn't change.
That's not covering up anything, right?
After, yep, that's a good point there too. And then sounds like now they want to cut the roster down and then tell the team their decision on the starting quarterback. I think he said that this morning as well. So
makes sense.
Yeah, maybe we'll find out Wednesday, or I don't know if it would get out late Tuesday night after the roster cuts there. But that seems like the timeline now to find the starting quarterback, which we still think is going to be Jacoby Brissett. But in the game last night, how do you think, we could start with Jacoby again, only one series. How do you think he kind of fared? I mentioned, the pressure play he picked up. He had also a nice throw downfield to KJ Osborne after he took the hit on the shoulder that Osborne couldn't corral. But just one series of work, but where's your kind of confidence level? You can bring this into the whole summer as well. Where's your kind of confidence level with Jacoby Brissett if he is your week one starter?
I mean, he was better. I like the way he bounced back from the hit. He did get hurt. It was so limited. I still feel like he's trending in the wrong direction heading into the regular season. I'm not totally out on him, but I would have liked to see him close camp, close the preseason on a little higher note. I don't have a ton of thoughts on Jacoby Brissett after last night beyond the injury, because we didn't see a ton. What we did see was heavily impacted by the offensive line. So,
oh yes. But then May came in, 5 series, rest of the first half. It was pretty good. I'd say it was pretty encouraging, promising. Again, the thing that really stood out to me is like for the second straight week, just how cool and calm and comfortable he looked, even in a situation that was actively working against him at times
Right.
with the penalties, with him, his offensive linemen are attacking him and stepping on his shoe and ripping his shoes off. Now, I think it's important. Like, it wasn't perfect. He missed some throws. He had another botched exchange under center. He's in total, he's going against the Commanders' second and third stringers, right? Like, they benched 35 players or something last night on offense and defense. So it was against backups, but you're still seeing the high level playmaking abilities, the high ceiling traits that leave his ceiling as kind of a future franchise quarterback. And I think that's pretty exciting to see that on the field right now.
Yeah, that's really what you look at when you come away from that game. That, all right, this is why I used a third overall pick on the guy, right?
Yep.
Because you're not drafting a guy third overall to be the product of his environment. That, Mac Jones, JJ McCarthy, guys like that. You're drafting him third overall to elevate his environment, and that's what Drake May did last night. Like you said, it was against backups, and he still has room to grow, but if he can do that consistently, that's kind of what you're looking for. It was all falling apart around him. Line couldn't get lined up. There were bad routes. There were some drops. There's penalties everywhere. And he still leads them down the field for a touchdown. That's high-level stuff, regardless of who it's against, because he was getting no help from those around him. He kind of did it on that 2-minute drill, too. I'm sure we'll get to that. But that you look at that overall, and it's like that's kind of the mentality you want to see from this kid and the skill set you want to see from this kid. So I thought that was his most encouraging drive of the summer.
Yeah. 3rd and 14, like right out of the gate, back in your own end zone. And you see the scrambling abilities. He takes off 17-yard first down gain. And then a couple plays, the crosser to Polk, and then one downfield to Pop where pressure's right in his face. Just, the whole coaching staff and Elliott Wolf like really hit home the just confident, cool, calm, collected. And you're still seeing that on the field last night too, which I think is pretty encouraging. And then the 2-minute drive, which you just mentioned, that's been his biggest struggle in camp, right? That's been the one thing Jacoby Brissett has had over him. And this was the first time May really got to do it with the starters, and it clicked, and they should have had a touchdown. And you see the out of structure play to KJ Osborne deep downfield, and that gets called back to a penalty. So I'm giving them the success and the check mark for that. But that felt like a good hurdle to kind of cross there to end his summer. That was the big thing he's been struggling with, and they would have had a touchdown if Chuks Okorafor could line up correctly, like 3 inches forward. But
yeah, I mean, we can yell about that soon. I'm kind of trying to hold that back when we get to it. But yeah, I'll give May credit for that drive. Like everything you said there, that was his biggest issue in camp. I'm glad he got the opportunity. He handled it well. Now get freaking lined up around him, please. My God.
We'll get to that. But yeah, I think it's still just really positive stuff for him. Again, not perfect, but you're seeing, again, as you said it, like why you draft this guy number 3 overall and that really high ceiling.
Yeah.
Could I compare him to a future Hall of Famer? Would you allow me to do that?
What do you got?
Watching it back today, just some of the footwork and the arm stuff. Tell me you didn't get a little Aaron Rodgers in there.
Yeah, you're not the first person I've heard say that. But this is something you're going to see a lot of people, and I'm not going to tell anybody how to think. I'm just saying get ready for this. You're going to see a lot of people look at Drake May, whether it's in that game or once he takes over as a starter, and even if the numbers look good, they're going to tell you Drake May is not succeeding because he's not a technically sound quarterback, and he's not. This is what you get with one of these playground guys. Like, it's not going to look pretty technically. And if it doesn't go well, it kind of opens the floodgates. So I'm just saying to Patriots fans, get ready to fight that battle. I was texting with a friend today who loves Josh Allen, and was all excited when the acquaintance. And when they drafted Drake May, it was like, yes, we have our Josh Allen. And now he's like, well, the mechanical stuff worries me. I'm like, no, you don't get, it's one or the other. You get a mechanically sound quarterback or you get your Josh Allen prototype. You're not going to get both. That's not really how these guys work. That's not to say there aren't things that can be cleaned up, but he's never going to be Brady. And Rodgers is the perfect example of this. You would not teach a quarterback like it growing up, right? You get a kid in Pop Warner. You would never teach him to throw a football the way Aaron Rodgers throws a football. Steph Curry's another one. Like his jump shot is very uncharacteristic. And people, he's the greatest shooter of all time. It works for him. And Drake May is going to be one of those guys where I think there's going to be some people that look at the mechanics and shake their head. If it works for him, or it's worked for him so far, we'll see what happens, which great. Like if it works for him, that's awesome. I don't really care if he's mechanically sound, if he's making plays and winning football games. You're going to hear a lot of people tell you that it's fool's gold early on because the mechanics are a mess. It's just going to be interesting to see how that goes.
Yep. I mean, he has the arm strength to do a lot of that stuff.
Right. So he can do it. To me, if you can make a 60-yard throw on a dot, throwing it behind your back with one leg in the air, if you can make that throw consistently, I don't really care. If you're making it consistently, I don't really care how you make it. But you got to make it consistently. And I think I don't think he'll be done in because of his mechanics, I guess is my point. Like, I acknowledge it's not going to look pretty, like with Rodgers, or Phillip Rivers is another one, a guy he drew some comps to. If he gets done in, to me, it's going to be because the game's too fast for him, and or because he gets hurt due to just his running style and the pieces around him. I don't think it's going to be due to his mechanics. I think these mechanics work for him once they kind of clean up the footwork a little bit. They're trending in the right direction. There's work, but it's never going to be ideal. There's going to be people who tell you he's never going to work because of his mechanics.
Yep. I hate to compare him to a future Hall of Famer after a preseason game against backups, the Washington Commanders backups too. But I don't know, just watching some of those, the fundamentals on some of those plays. Again, I was just getting the flashbacks, and it maybe shouldn't be a big surprise because Alex Van Pelt is coaching him, who coached Aaron Rodgers. We heard he was in on his draft visit before they even drafted him, showing him Aaron Rodgers film. So you could expect some correlation there.
And you know what? Van Pelt knows how to make it work with these kind of quarterbacks. So that's a good thing. That's a good logical pairing.
Yeah, definitely. So anything else? Quarterbacks? Did we miss anything else? I think we hit pretty much all the key points Mayo talked about.
The Joe Milton experience, baby. I told you guys. Was I not spot on in my assessment of Joe Milton? The most entertaining preseason football we've ever seen here in New England.
Yep.
Tell me you didn't have fun watching that last night. I'm not saying he played well.
I mean,
he had his moments.
Well, you all know who had fun watching that last night? Chris Collinsworth.
Oh my
gosh.
He was, well, it's so funny. The college football fans have this thing. College football fans don't like people who are exclusively NFL fans. There's they kind of look down on that group. They are having so much fun, the college football people, watching the NFL only people
figure him out,
discover Joe Milton. So they had a field day with that last night. The throw to Landers was awesome.
Yeah.
Where he's like in midair and just kind of only has his wrist because there's 3 defenders around him. And it's still 25 yards on a dot. But he had some bad misses too.
The first throw, he comes in and there's a guy in his face and he just flicks it 50 yards.
Yeah.
And it completely misses Jalen Reagor, who was getting held very badly. So maybe he could have made a play on it. But
how high that ball went, how far that ball went, I laughed. I audibly laughed when he let that ball go because there's nobody else. I'm sorry. There's nobody else who's doing that. It's insane.
Yep. So
there's a tweet today that was like, Joe Milton looks like the best player ever in a sport somebody hasn't invented yet.
Can we get him on the handball team or something?
Somebody said he would cook at handball.
It's a huge target. He could hit that net and just throw absolute piss missiles from
that would be dangerous for the goalie. You might, because I don't think those goalies wear pads. They might have to.
No, I don't think they do. So, but you mentioned it's still some of the sprays. He went 5 for 17 last night.
Right. I think he started 1 for 7.
Yeah. So Bailey Zappe got one series. He threw one pass and then they ran everything out. Where are you at on your roster projection? If they keep all 4, do they keep 3 and maybe move on from Zappe? I know Malik Willis just got traded to Green Bay for a 7th round pick. So maybe you see something like that. I thought Green Bay could be a suitor for Zappe, but
which, by the way, what a brutal miss by Tennessee.
Yeah, I know. Was he a 2nd rounder, Malik Willis?
I think he was a little later because he's the 2nd quarterback in that draft.
He was supposed to go higher.
People thought he was going to be a 1st round pick. No, he's a 3rd round pick.
Yeah, 3rd round pick. Okay, but still 2 years later, 2-3 years later, and you're trading him for a 7th. Not great. But that the bottom of the Patriots quarterback depth chart. How do you think it shakes out at this time tomorrow when they do have their 53-man roster?
So I don't think Zappe makes the team. I think they offer him a spot back on the practice squad. So I think they're going to keep a veteran. And this is, by the way, all assuming Jacoby Brissett's shoulder is fine and he's just like sore. Yes. If he has an actual injury, they're keeping Zappe and they're keeping 4 guys. If he's fine, assuming he's fine, I think Zappe gets cut. And then the question becomes, does he take a practice squad spot? I think they'd like to have him. He may just be done with it. And I wouldn't blame him. He may just be done with it. And he may get a spot on a 53 somewhere else. In that case, I think they would find another veteran, a Will Grier type, Nathan Rourke type, to bring back on the practice squad. DTR is a good name. Albert Breer brought that up with me and Bertrand on Patriots pregame yesterday. But it's tough to go off of this, but you'd like to think Mayo learned a thing or two from Bill Belichick or picked up a thing or two from Bill Belichick, right? Under Bill Belichick, the quarterback that didn't play in the preseason never made the team. So based on Zappe's not being used like a guy they plan on making the team.
Yep. I agree with you there. So I think that's it. Quarterback talk. We're both still on Jacoby Brissett week 1. I'm not putting words in your mouth there. If he's healthy.
Yeah. Yep. For week 1. Yes.
For week 1. Yep. So we'll take a quick break. We'll hear from our friends over at Game Time, and then the real fun starts, and we'll talk about the offensive line and how that could impact this quarterback plan as well here. But first, we'll hear from Game Time. I got to talk to you guys about Game Time, which is the authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, and it makes getting tickets faster and easier because prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guaranteed, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying all your MLB tickets. They have flash deals to save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event, and zone deals to save if you're looking to sit in a specific section. It is baseball season, and the Red Sox are hot, and while they're going on the road for the next week, they'll be back in Fenway against the Yankees, where you can see All-Star Game MVP Jarren Duran as the Red Sox continue to make their playoff push. And if you're in the Boston area, if you're around Fenway, Cask and Flagon, Bleacher Bar, getting a bite to eat, getting a drink, Game Time has last-minute deals where you can save up to 60% off on buying last-minute tickets for sports. So make sure you check the Game Time app right before first pitch to make sure you're not missing any last-minute deals. And you can even get your comedy, theater, or concert tickets on Game Time as well. So take the guesswork out of buying all your MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. Guess we didn't have our new Game Time ad in there because, as Jimmy says, the Red Sox are falling like a rock. As
they made history today.
That's true, but then they lost. So, well, let's talk about the offensive line. Oh boy, the offensive line. 8 penalties on the starting unit. That was the big thing. The penalties. 3 freaking illegal formations on Chuks Okorafor, which, I get it might happen once, especially on a primetime preseason game with a flag happy ref. They probably want to make this point, but then to have it a second time and a third time is just kind of embarrassing. And then Michael Onwenu gets called for it. You had bad snaps from Nick Leverett. You had City So stepping on Drake May's shoe, and then he left with an injury, unfortunately. You had Layden Robinson, who got called for a false start, I think, even though he had some positive moments that we can get to too. But that offensive line, and it was just the penalties. The protection wasn't great, but it wasn't the worst thing ever. I think the Brissett and May were only under pressure on 27% of the dropbacks, but the penalties were just insane and flat out embarrassing at times from that unit.
Look, I don't care about the performance because they were playing scrubs. I'm sorry. That's just the reality of it.
That's also true. Again,
I don't care. And the other reality is, if you can't get lined up, in the NFL, nothing else matters. Brian, we could do a great podcast. If my microphone's all the way over here, it's going to sound crappy because I'm not lined up correctly. It doesn't matter. It doesn't freaking matter. Am I still plugged in? I am plugged.
We got you. We got you. Right.
Get lined up. It's the NFL. I kept the whole night. You know what I kept going back to? You know what kept popping into my mind? You remember that clip of Matt Ryan, like at the end of his career with the Falcons? It went viral where there's like some tight end in motion
and
he
yelling at him.
He specifically yells, "Get effing set."
Yes.
Come on. You get a warning. You get a warning as a player and as a team if you are not lined up correctly on the offensive line. So Chuks and Okorafor got a warning. He got called once. He got called twice. He got called a third time. He was still lining up incorrectly. I've never seen anything like that, Brian. And look, it's blame who you want. It's kind of on everybody. I said this from the beginning. They don't have an NFL caliber left tackle. The coach has got to get on him once he's out there. And then I'm sorry, dude, like you keep getting called. It's one thing, and I've talked about this, to like half step early where you occasionally get called for a false start. I don't really care about that. I don't care about that because if you're doing that every time, the 2 times it gets called are worth the 50 it doesn't. This is insane. Line up. Line up. And it's, I don't know if he was, if there's a miscommunication, if it was some sort of protest that he doesn't want to be playing on the left side. Look, he's going to make the team because they don't have enough tackles. Brian, I was tempted to leave him off my roster projection last night because that's not NFL caliber. I'm sorry, it's not. It's just not. That you get chirped by the referee that once again called. Do you remember that?
That was deserved. It was deserved too.
If I'm Scott Peters, if I'm Gerard Mayo, I'm playing that on a loop in the facility, in the offensive line meeting room for the next 2 weeks. I want them to hear that in their sleep.
Yeah.
I don't understand how you can have so many formational penalties. And here's the other thing. So it's a preseason game. I get it. You're trying to figure things out. If he does that in a regular season game, what happens? Because if that was a regular season game, you would have to bench that guy. But they don't really have anybody else. It's just it's just a reminder. And look, I know I'm kind of as fired up as I get. It's not like this was all a revelation last night. But I've been talking about this since March. And I feel like people need to see this, almost cartoonish, over exaggerated penalty night to get it through. They don't have the players that tackle. They just don't to get through a season, and they're not going to get them. You might get a guy on waivers. You might get a guy in a trade, but these are back of the roster players. And this should be a chief concern. And I do think, I know they've said it's not part of the consideration. I think either it is and they're not telling us. And if it's not, frankly, it should be part of the reason Drake May is not going to play week 1 and not going to play to start the season. And maybe we don't see him until later than we think.
Yeah. And I know you said, with Chuks or just the line in general, you don't want to put a lot into performance, but he couldn't line up correctly. And then his performance, he gave up 3 pressures against backups. So it just wasn't good at all. If he wasn't blowing the play dead because he couldn't line up, he was blowing the play dead because he was giving up pressures on the quarterback. Like he was at fault for the May touchdown that came back deep to KJ Osborne. It was just inexcusable at times. It really was. And, you mentioned you almost left him off your roster projection. I think it was Christian Fourier on the post-game show on TV. He said, kind of agreed with you. He said, this is what loses people jobs in the NFL. Like that is, it just can't happen. And you get into the meeting room and Gerard Mayo is probably just going to look at him and be like, what the hell are you doing? Like just move up and line up correctly. Cause again, it's just inexcusable like that.
Under Bill, he'd be cut tomorrow. And now under Bill, I don't think, and I know Bill kind of left them short in tackle the last few years, but he at least had Trent Brown, right? But under Bill, that guy gets cut. That because it's not just about the performance, it's about the message to the team. If you can't do the basic things, they're not going to put you on the field. Getting line up is a basic thing. And I don't know if it happens once, like I get it. Like you said, it's under a microscope in that game and all of that. It happened 3 times in the span of like 20 plays. The refs are telling you, the coaches, I would hope, are telling you, move up. And it's not, the last one's not even close. It's not even like I thought I was in the right spot. Like, he was so far back there. So, look, there's other issues with the offensive line, too. I don't want to put it all on a core for you. You have the play where Jacoby Brissett gets hurt. What is it? City needs to pull on a play action, but he doesn't pull deep enough. Layden Robinson gets blown off the ball. He's back in his track. They collide with each other. Meanwhile, Jermichael Hasty doesn't have his head up off the play action. He bumps so off, and now you got a free edge rush. Like, it was all a mess. It was all a mess. But it starts at the tackle position. And I know there's a philosophy, and I mostly subscribe to this, that if you have 4 good offensive linemen, you can make it work. If you have 4 good offensive linemen, you can cover up one spot. I do generally believe that, with 2 caveats. 1, that spot can't be left tackle. And 2, there is a baseline. You can only cover up so much. And that's what I think you're seeing from them right now. And now they've got a lot to figure out. We talked going into the game, can this Mike Onwenu line maybe show us something where they can stay and be the week 1 line? I don't think they can. City So might be out. What does that look like? Does Mike Onwenu go back inside? Do they now have to keep Michael Jordan? Who does that knock off the roster? They're also probably going to have to go out and get a backup center. I don't know where that roster spot comes from unless City So makes the team initially, then goes on IR. The whole thing, I said this on a podcast with Matt Dolph earlier on 98.5thesportshub.com, Brian, and this is what has me so aggravated. We knew there were a lot of questions about this line going into camp. And we knew that was kind of the biggest question. They were going to have to figure out the line. And fine, they made the personnel moves they made. I'm generally pretty big when it comes to, there's nothing we can do about that now. Although I will say again to all the people who say, what would, what's his name? The Cardinals signed with the tackle signed with the Cardinals.
With the Cardinals?
From the Bengals.
Jonah Williams.
What would Jonah Williams have done that Okorafor doesn't line up on sides is what I would say to that. But, it is what it is. The group is what it is. So fine. They were going to have to figure something out in camp. This is what's so frustrating, Brian. Do you feel, forget whether you feel better or worse about the group. Do you feel you got any genuine answers about that group over the course of camp? I feel there's just as many, if not more questions now than there were on whatever it was, July 23rd. I don't think they answer. And there's multiple reasons for that. Some of it's injuries. Some of it is they stuck with the Vidarian low line as long as they did. Some of it is, certain guys didn't show up the way you maybe wanted them to show up to camp in terms of performance. But I don't feel like we got any answers on the offensive line. I feel like it's just as much, and it was never going to be, you were never going to feel great about it. I never expected to feel great about it. I didn't expect to feel the same about it coming out of camp. I thought you might see something that had a little clarity. And again, if you feel differently, tell me. I feel the exact same as I did on July 23rd.
Do you think, I still go back to like those first 2 padded practices when they had Caden Wallace at left tackle, and it seemed like they were building some momentum there, and then they just ditched it. And then they went to the Vidarian Low line, which, was all right for 3 weeks, and then Vidarian Low got hurt, which isn't their fault, and then they really shuffled this up. But I don't know. Do you think there was a point where there was just too much cross training involved? Like, that should almost be a luxury. Like, maybe we should just train at our starting 5 and then our backups, and then we can cross train all this. Like, that may be something where we didn't get much answers because they were moving all these guys in and out, and they weren't just kind of sticking 5 and rolling with it. So yeah, I'm kind of with you. We're in about the same spot we entered camp, which isn't great. So I'll ask you, if Okorafor looked really bad, is that just Vidarian Low? You think that's just kind of plug and play when Vidarian Low comes back healthy? And then how does the right side look? Like, Mike Onwenu looked like Mike Onwenu at tackle, right? Like, it's not perfect, but it's good.
It's fine.
Do you keep him there?
Although he lined up incorrectly too.
Yeah, that's
so. I do wonder how much of that. They missed David Andrews last night. I do wonder if David Andrews gets in that huddle and says, "You're playing like a-holes, cut it out."
Yep.
And kind of, I know some. I think
he'll snap the ball correctly, which
right. I think, well, that's backup center. That's another conversation. I think Chris Price, somebody tweeted out last night that Scott Peters had a come to Jesus meeting with the offensive line. I think David Andrews will put the fear of God into him. If they missed him, I do think you have to put Vidarian Lowe back at left tackle at this point. I think you got to put Vidarian Lowe back at left. I think you got to put Chuks Okorafor back at right. Mike Onwenu, and then City Sophie's healthy. You've just spent too much time on that offensive line and not try it. And I think that's what they have to do. And that probably is after last night. I do think that's their best five. And then as for the backup center thing, Nick Leverett is going to make the roster because he's their best backup guard, especially if So is out, right? He allows them the flexibility to move Onwenu to tackle because you still have enough guards without making another roster move. He was a fine center up until last night. He wasn't great, but he was fine. So he's going to make the team. The question is, do they want to add another center? There'll be a center certainly on the practice squad at least, and it's not going to be one of the guys that were here. I know they cut Charles Turner. I think did they cut Fornadell today too?
No,
not yet. No, okay, but that's coming. Or if he's not cut, he's not playing center anymore. Neither is Antonio Mafi. They're going to have to add another center. The question to me is, does that guy start on the practice squad? Or again, if the only way you get him on the roster to me is if City, so you know he's going to miss time. Say he has a high ankle sprain. You put him on the initial 53, then you put him on IR. You put in a waiver claim on a center. You find a center in free agency, and you put that guy on the roster. But I would be fine if for now the backup center's on the practice squad. Despite what we saw last night, I know people are going to think this is kind of a crazy take, especially how mad I was about the offensive line earlier. I think Nick Leverett can get you through a game at center. Like if David Andrews gets hurt, he can finish the game. And then from there, maybe there's more roster moves depending on what happens. But they do need to add another center, but I don't know that he needs to be on the 53.
Yep. And then you just pray David Andrews doesn't get hurt.
But David Andrews, I don't know that there's a player they can afford to lose less.
Yeah, honestly, because that's the one. Center with him, and then whatever spot Mike Onwenu's playing, that's really your only confident spot on.
But also line. At center, the center makes all the checks and does all the communicating in this offense, not the quarterback. And I think that is part of why they couldn't get lined up last night.
Yep.
Again, I think they just needed David Andrews to hit him upside the head and say, "Cut the shit."
Yeah. So you hope it looks better with him. I thought Caden Wallace was pretty encouraging. Now, it was only at right tackle last night, and it was only in the second half, again, against backups. But I'd like to see how he looks next to Mike Onwenu at right tackle instead of Chuks Okorafor. I think that could be kind of a better setup going forward because, A, he could line up correctly, and B, I think they could get more push in the run game. And again, just Chuks hasn't been that good. So I thought Wallace was kind of a positive on that line. You can bump Mike in back to right guard, and then you can have Layden Robinson or City So if he's not healthy at left guard there. So I think that would be a good look to kind of look at because again, I think Caden Wallace was pretty impressive last night again in limited action there in the second half, but we'll wait and see there. And then Walt brings up Cole Strange. He could maybe factor into your backup center whenever he comes back. We don't have a time frame on him, but Gerard Mayo was asked about that this morning and said they were comfortable with him when they drafted him, maybe moving into center down the line because of his athleticism. So maybe they have all these guards. Maybe that's Cole Strange's long-term position switch, even when he comes back, is get him inside the center. We haven't seen how he could snap, but couldn't be worse than what they have at this point.
He did do it at the Senior Bowl, and he wasn't bad. That's true. It wouldn't hurt to try at this point. I don't know whether or not he'd be good at it, but like you said, they have a ton of guards. They need center. I would try it once he's healthy enough. You still need a center because Cole Strange, I think the report is going to be out like through October.
Yeah.
You might need a second center by then. So it doesn't stop you from adding somebody, but I think cross-training him at center when he does come back makes a lot of sense.
He should be in the back room just snapping every day right now as part of his rehab. So we'll see if he factors into the equation there. But that's the offensive line. Unfortunately, you're still so bring that back to the quarterback. You wouldn't throw Drake May behind that line right now, right? That's factoring into the equation for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Because they're saying it's not, even though Gerard Mayo said on the radio this morning that you don't want to throw him to the Wolves. Kind of sounds like it will factor in the equation, but they're saying it's not. So we'll wait and see there. But any other whole game in general, like other positions or just big kind of takeaways?
I thought Jalen Polk looked really good.
Yep.
I think if you're a Patriots fan and you want like to really something to hang your hat on from this game, with about 5.5 minutes left, they go under center, play action, Polk on an intermediate crosser from Drake May, puts it right in his hands. He picks up a couple yards after the catch. That's the one play you look at as a Patriots fan. And like I've seen a lot of people say in chat, it's going to be a long season. That's what's going to keep you warm during the cold winter, because that is your first round quarterback hitting your second round receiver on a play that is bread and butter for your new offensive coordinator. That's the vision. That is what they're building towards. That is, and I'm not comparing the players individually, but what, Brady dig route to Edelman, or, the Haas to James White, like those kind of staple plays and player combinations.
That's their staple.
That's going to be a big time staple. That is a play we hope we are seeing a lot for a long time here in New England. And they actually executed it, and they executed it well. So I look at that. I look at that play and I say, okay, here we go. One other thought from the game. I thought Joshua Bledsoe was really good. Yeah. And that's 2 games in a row. I have him on the roster. I think gives you some good safety depth in the box. He'll play on special teams as well. He's really up to the intensity the last few games. So I just want to give him his due. I thought he was one of the better players on the field last night.
Definitely. So do you bump Del Pettis out? He's been a popular UDFA. Do you bump him out for Bledsoe, or did you make room for both of those guys?
I had both of them. I only kept 6 corners. I cut Sean Wade and Marcellus Dial.
That makes sense. Yep. So yeah, he was really good last night. That's a good shout out. But yeah, Polk, you see the hands catch too earlier, like along the sidelines, give him some breathing room. That goes back to his Washington film as well. But yeah, that crosser was probably exactly how they envisioned that duo connecting when they drafted them in April. Like May attacking over the middle of the field, Polk in the intermediate area. Like that was just exactly how, like, a glimpse into the hopeful future there. So he was good. Another rookie like Jaheim Bell, you see some of the juice he can bring to that tight end room. He'd be my probably favorite for the tight end 3 spot, just because he can give you those things. They still probably need a blocker. Maybe at this point you can just get Mitchell Wilcox onto the practice squad and elevate him. But I thought that was good to see, even away from the ball. Some of the times he was having some impressive routes down the field. And then in the same type of competition, RB3, I thought, give Kevin Harris his flowers, because we haven't seen Kevin Harris make a play like that in the passing game where he breaks a tackle and scores a touchdown. So I thought he had a good game too, in those kind of depth battles on the offense there.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yep. But I think that was pretty much it for the game. Oh, kicker. Did you read into anything of that? Chad Ryland went first. He finally got a field goal attempt. He made it. Slide. They ran out for 2 60-plus yarders and he missed them. So, you don't want to criticize him too much for that one. But did you read into the rotation at all, that they let Ryland go first, or anything in that kicker battle from last night?
So Gerard Mayo said on the Sports Hub before the game, and this was kind of tongue in cheek, but he said it's easy to evaluate kickers who's making the most kicks. Joey Sly. And the 2 60-yarders, I think that was a heat check more than anything. Yeah. I thought all right, this guy's really feeling it. Let's see what we got. I still think it's Sly, but I think Ryland sticks around on the practice squad.
Yep, I could see that unfolding as well. So that is the preseason finale recap. We will quickly hear from our friends over at Prize Picks, and then we will get back. The Patriots made their first round of cuts today, so we will break that down and do a quick look ahead to the rest of the potential cuts tomorrow, where they have to cut down to 53 by 4 o'clock. But first, a very quick break, and we'll hear from our friends. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members, and it's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports, because unlike other apps on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers as you pick just more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. And Prize Picks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off, which ones aren't? Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on Prize Picks. And I know we're all excited to see Drake May eventually, but another rookie quarterback is going to start week 1 out in Chicago, and one Caleb Williams passing yard gets you 1 win on Prize Picks every week in September. That's right. Only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football season or weekend in September. So that's 4 weeks of free W's. Don't miss this deal on Prize Picks because it's gone when September ends. Great song. Shout out Green Day. But download Prize Picks app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks for a deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, 14 cuts for the Patriots today. I'll run through them quickly. We had lawn snapper Tucker Addington, wide receiver Quan Baker, defensive lineman William Bradley Kane, Josiah Brunson, linebacker Steele Chambers, running back Deshaun Fenwick, corner Azizi Hearn, our tackle Zuri Henry, defensive end Christian McCarroll, tight end Michael Petway, defensive lineman Sam Roberts, center Charles Turner, corner Mikey Victor, and tight end Jacob Warren. First 14 down. No major surprises. I think none of those guys were really on anyone's rosters. You could say William Bradley Kane got more of a role last few weeks along the edge with some of the injuries there. Sam Roberts has always been involved in the defensive line, but no major surprises. But did anything stand out to you, or would you like any of those guys back on the practice squad moving forward?
Nothing major. I had William Bradley King on, but that was, I think I maybe got caught up in the moment last night.
He was decent last night. 3 pressures.
That was more about the lack of depth at edge than Bradley King himself. I'd like to see him back. I'd like to see Fenwick back. I think Petway will be back. Sam Roberts. I'd take Mikey Victor back. I think Addington too will be back just to keep an extra long snap around. Nothing major though. No major surprises so far. I think those are coming tomorrow.
Yep. I saw someone in the chat mention Kayshon Boutte didn't play till the second half, didn't have a catch last night. Do you think he could be, I don't know if it would be a surprise cut because he's like wide receiver 7 right now. He seems behind Jalen Reagor, but do you think Kayshon Boutte is going to be on or off here as we move forward?
I think I had him off, and he'll be back on the practice squad, but I had him off. Consistency is a problem for him. He had that one flash, but he wasn't consistent enough this summer at the end of the day.
You don't think he'll get claimed?
No, probably not. And I'll if they lose him, they lose him. I'd be okay with that.
Yeah. The consistency, it just hasn't been there. And you look at the receivers in front of him that have his skill set, like it's Jalen Polk, it's KJ Osborne, it's Kendrick Bourne when he comes back, and they're all better players than him. So you'd like him to stick around, but if they lose him, it's probably not the end of the world there with Boutte. So we talked about the quarterback room. We have Zappe probably going elsewhere. Any other specific spot on the roster or battle you're looking at? Like Joe Giles Harris, Christian Ellis has been kind of a popular depth battle. They both had impressive nights last night. Tons of competition in the cornerback room. We had Del Pettis and Josh Bledsoe in the safety room. Anything that you're going to be specifically watching by cutdown day tomorrow?
Yeah, those corners, because there's more. That's the one position where they're probably going to cut NFL caliber players, is at corner. So do those guys make, and I think they're all the guys that they'd realistically cut. I think they're all waiver eligible, right? Marco Wilson's the one I think is right on the line.
Sean Wade.
Oh, Sean Wade might not be.
Is he? It's 4 years, right?
It's 3, but you have to play at least 6 games in a season to count.
Okay. Let me see. Sean
Either
Wade.
way, I think that corner room is the one room where you look and see maybe whether or not guys are getting through.
Sean Wade's played 3 years, but he only played 3 games in each of his first 2 years.
So I think this is a better question for Pat's Cap. I think that makes him waiver eligible.
Okay.
I really wish on like Pro Football Reference or on overthecap.com, they would just have a little thing that was like waiver eligible, yes or no.
Waiver eligible, yeah. And then Marco Wilson, yeah, he's played 3 years and he's played 14 plus games each year. So he's probably not waiver eligible there, but yeah, they're going to have to release some talent there in that corner room. It was a talented room. So, but they could also acquire players, right? They have that third waiver claim. they've talked about it a lot. They're almost acting like it's the number 3 pick in the draft, I feel, with Mayo saying that they could get a starting tackle or guard with that third waiver claim. Tim Patrick, I see a lot of people in the chat. He's someone the Broncos might move off from, that wide receiver. Donovan Peoples-Jones was another one who has a lot of experience with Alex Van Pelt from their time in Cleveland. Are you looking for any of those receivers, maybe, if they don't like the Jalen Reagor experiment, or looking for
Well,
more?
I think it's more, I mean, Donovan Peoples-Jones, you can get like a true X there, and that gives you some insurance for Tyquan Thornton. Tim Patrick, if he gets cut, I would sign. I wouldn't. Did he get cut? Last I saw, they were trying to trade him.
Yeah, so they were trying to trade him.
I don't know. Like he missed all of last year with, what was it, an Achilles, right?
He's missed the last 2 years, hasn't he, at this point?
Yeah, he hasn't played in 2 years. It's a little like Devontae Parker-ish to me. I'd rather Donovan Peoples-Jones personally, but I think bringing in Peoples-Jones would be a good signing because it gives you another option at X besides Tyquan Thornton.
Yeah, your backup X is Reagor right now, so I don't know if they like his kick return abilities, but if maybe they feel someone else can do that, like maybe that's a swap they make. If they're both for free, I'd probably prefer Tim Patrick. I like him a little bit more, but
even though he hasn't played,
yeah, I still think so. But yeah, like again, you probably have to trade for him, so maybe just Donovan Peoples-Jones for free is a better deal there. But yeah, lots of experience with AVP, so maybe that would be a good upgrade on your X depth chart over Jalen Reagor there. So, and then any linemen? Do you think? I'd imagine they're going to claim some linemen. I don't know what names will shake free there, but have you seen any that might interest you, or have you been researching your backup linemen on all these rosters that might shake free?
I've been trying. It's so hard because you don't know who's, like, I'm looking at roster projections and there's very little like there are very few guys that are consensus cuts outside of guys that just clearly aren't rosterable players because nobody has enough lineman depth, right? So it's hard to find like one name. I still like you calling Darian Kennard. I still like that, but it's hard to find specific guys.
Yep. Yeah, I've been trying to pay attention to the Eagles there to see if Kennard shakes free. He hasn't yet, so he would be another one. Did Kingsley get cut? He was our Florida guy we drafted a few times in our mock drafts.
Oh yeah, he's a center.
Like an actual center. But Charles Turner was an actual center and they didn't use him at center. But
well, they didn't think he was a good center. Maybe they think Kingsley's better. Nope, he's still on the Lions.
Okay.
See if I can find.
Maybe he shakes free.
Apparently he's doing well there, so
maybe not then. Okay. So
I'm just seeing some things that say he's on the he's one of the UDFAs that has a real chance to make the roster. That was like 2 weeks ago. So
all right. But yeah, they'll have that third waiver claim. So I know Mike Reese too in his Sunday note said they might be aggressive adding another defensive tackle. So could be some good movement even after they finalize their initial roster at 4 p.m. Tomorrow. Add some, do some roster shuffling there. They'll have almost 2 weeks, 12 days until their first game. So they'll have some time to tinker with some things out there as well. So anything else? Any last thoughts before we wrap up and get out of here?
I just want to see what they add externally. I think that's going to tell us a lot about where they are, how competitive they plan on being. Obviously, they plan to compete, but I'm saying like how invested they are in winning in the short term and maybe what their plans are for Drake May. I think that's the big thing to watch the next few days.
Yep. All right, so we'll wrap it up there. Again, they have to cut down to 53 players by 4 p.m. tomorrow, and then they'll be back on the practice fields Wednesday and Thursday. We only get the start of practice now because it's almost like a regular season practice. So
yep.
We'll see what we can.
It is. It's not almost like it is.
It is a regular season practice. Yeah. So we'll see what we can take. I don't know if we'll get an answer on the quarterbacks or the offensive line, how that looks, but we will let you guys know as always, and we'll be back here to break it down sometime later this week. We're not positive yet, but make sure you are locked on to Patriots CLNS on Twitter and Patriots Press Pass on YouTube so you get notified when we go live. And you can also follow Alex on Twitter at RealAlexBarth. Head over to 985thesportshub.com for his written Patriots coverage. He's got the roster cutdowns for you and everything up to date on there. Sounds like a roster projection as well. And you can follow me on Twitter at I am Brian Hines and head over to patspulpit.com for our preseason coverage, and we have our live trackers and everything for roster cut down there as well. So thank you guys, as always, for tuning in with us tonight, and we will see you guys later this week.